All right, good evening, everybody. I'll go ahead and get started real quick. I'll ask Elder Scruggs, will you give us a word of prayer, please, sir? Amen. Thank you, sir. And I want to thank you guys for your help. She's fine. Welcome to the world of MS. You just never know. It wasn't for those of y'all that was here, she was fine probably about 10, 15 minutes ago. But when it hits, she didn't even know where she was. So it's just, it's a temporary thing. I told Trey what to do till I get there. But that's just how, when a lot of times when we're talking about we thank God that we in our right mind, you take stuff for granted a lot of times. There have been instances where she literally doesn't know where she is, who I am, and situations like that. So, I mean, it's just one of those things. But physically, she's fine. And you can see she wanted to walk. Exactly. That's how quickly it happens. Oh, I think Clement was trying to listen. Give me a shout. Well, is Clement wanting to hear? See if he's wanting to hear what's going on. Is it? Are you listening in? He's watching the door for us, but he's listening in. So, but yeah, that's it. It's literally, it can happen that quick, and the best thing to do is try to keep her calm. Because she'll try to. A lot of times, the more she panics, the worse it can be. So you just have to try to calm her. And then there's some medical type stuff we have to do. But prayer is more important than anything, y'all. That's what sustains us and keeps us. And the kids, these are the times I probably would miss Marissa the most. She's probably the second in command next to me. And Trey's pretty good too, but she y'all know her, she's a little general herself. So, but she's fine, and I appreciate y'all for y'all's love and support as well. Just continuously keep her and us all in your prayers. Amen. All right, I need your prayers too. It's not easy. I mean, it's really not easy. I thank God He's helped me. Now y'all see why I preach the way I do. Because the first few times it happened, it really throws you for a loop. I'll be a little transparent with you guys. The very first time it happened, it scared me because she was actually in the kitchen. She was getting ready to cook something, and I happened to go downstairs, and she was just standing in front of the stove, and I don't remember what she was cooking, but the water in it had boiled out, and she was just standing there looking at it. And I'm like, what are you doing? And this is before we really knew what was going on. And it was and I touched the cabinets, because that's my job, on my job, and they were hot, and it was about to start a fire. And so, I knew then something wasn't right, and then there's times where she didn't know one of the kids or some of the things that she should have known. So, you had to do the research. And what happens is she has lesions on her brain. That's one of the symptoms. And depending on how active they are at that moment, it affects certain brain activity. So sometimes it's the legs, sometimes it's the tremors, sometimes it's the memory. So you literally never know. But that's why she, that spell right there, that's probably the first one like that she's had, probably maybe the second one this whole year, where they used to happen maybe once or twice a week. So, yeah, amen. But God. So you have to learn to have challenges. That's why y'all hear me say I don't look at problems, I call them challenges. You have to learn how to deal with the challenges, but at the same time, when they show up, you got to take what you learned from the last lesson and apply it in this lesson, and then God provides what's needed for this one to go to the next. I guarantee you, by the time I get home, she's either going to be asleep or she's going to ask me what happened. Because that's the other thing, she literally does not remember from the time, she'll probably remember talking to you, but she did, because I didn't get any of them. But she'll probably remember that and wonder how she got home. She literally won't remember anything in between. So that's just how our minds are, you know. So we take a lot of things for granted, but we got a lot to be grateful for, y'all. Because there's some people that live in that state consistently and continually, and that's not a very easy place to be, okay? Y'all got any questions about her? I don't mind. I can help y'all. In this setting, I can't do it on a Sunday morning, but in this setting, and y'all can be y'all are already a big help to me, but since I have a small audience, anytime she has a flare-up, the best thing is to not draw a lot of attention to it and to try to keep her calm. Because especially when she's having the spasms, and she's aware of those. So she's trying to fight against it to be because she don't want to be a distraction. So if she feels like she's going to be a distraction or she's a problem, it'll stress her out more and it'll make it worse. So that's why usually we try to keep her calm and move her to a place where she can relax so that she doesn't work herself up trying to fight against it. But when she's like that, she doesn't know what's going on. But when she's having the spasm, she knows what's going on and she can feel it coming on. And a lot of times she'll tell me, and we try to head it off. But, you know, so if y'all are here and, you know, some of my family may not be available or whatever, that's how y'all can help, is by calming everybody else around and letting them know she's good. Just let them do what they need to do, or y'all help us do what we need to do to get her in a better place. Is that good? All right. Absolutely. Appreciate y'all. All right, we good? Anything going on anybody want to share? All right, what you got, bro? Yes, you did. Are you serious? I bet it did. And I know you was. My. Yeah, this was recent. Wow. And you didn't say anything at first. My. Wow. My. Now, aren't you glad you obeyed and did what you were supposed to do? It is, but it's not. See, that can teach us something. The creepy part of it is we literally, again, we take things for granted and we assume things that we have no control over. But it's not, because God showed you through that the power of obedience. He showed you the power of forgiveness, and He helped to show you how you can be freed from something, and that He allowed the grace for that to happen, because He could have passed a long time ago. But He graced and allowed that to happen to give you an opportunity to learn from this, and you sharing it here can help somebody else to understand we ought not let stuff go. We ought not let stuff linger. Yeah. He helped you have peace back. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing, man. Well, I'm glad you were obedient. Exactly. Right. Lesson learned. Exactly. You've learned something from it. Mm-hmm. And that's, excuse me, that's a form of us, God showing us how to not be pride-filled people. And so now you can walk in the spirit of humility, and God can do more stuff in you and through you because of that. I appreciate you sharing that, both then and now, so that we can be a part of that whole experience and see the lesson learned through it as well. Anybody else? I had a pretty good friend of mine that tragically lost her daughter this past weekend in a car accident. So that's another thing we take. To me, that's a parent's worst fear, is to lose your child. And I think we talked about in this setting things to say and not to say when somebody is experiencing a tragedy. Did we talk about some of that? I came across some. I want to touch on a few of those, but I cringe sometimes when these types of things happen. These are the times to me that social media can be a really big hindrance, because Yeah, because I mean, to me, it does an injustice to the family a little bit because sometimes they can't even properly share the information in a way that's healthy for them. They have to kind of do it a different way before it gets in the spread. You know, and a lot of people mean well, but you can hurt some people if you're not careful. And then the comments and the questions and and then everybody on there ain't always on there for the right reason. So, you know, as people of God, let's try to provide as much support and the positive type of help for people in those situations to balance out some of the other things they may encounter and experience. Anybody else got anything to share on that? Yeah. 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 It happens, you know, and this is instance of, you know, I hope that's more positive than there has been negative, but just the emotions of dealing with it and having the fallout that comes from it, that's enough for people to have to deal with without all the extra pressures that have to come as a result of some of the other things. And so let's try not to be a contributor to that type of activity and try to find ways to be a support to each other. So you never know what people are dealing with anyway, and then when something tragic happens, that can compound it. But as Christians, y'all tell me, what's some things that you shouldn't say to somebody if they've just lost someone? Yeah, so what if you have experienced it? Should you say it? Why? Y'all right, but why? Absolutely. Every situation different. I hear y'all. What did you say, Ms. Mulcahy? Amen. Amen. All right. Amen. Anybody else? Absolutely. Give me one more that you shouldn't say. Something it's gonna get better. Exactly. Even though that may be the case, they don't want to hear that right then and there. Why? Y'all on it tonight, ain't you? Absolutely. There's a process. There's a grieving process that has to take place, and you can't put a time frame on that, and you can't make them move faster than they're able to move. And give them well, I'm going to show you how to help them in a minute, but be cautious about those types of things. Yes, sir. Well, we're going to get to the do's in a minute. Let's do the don'ts first. Yeah, that's one of the ones I want you to say. Why shouldn't you say that? I'm going to come to you, Sister Jones. Yeah. All right, he in the ballpark. All right, those Jones. Wow. Right. Absolutely. Wow, I hadn't heard that one. You're right. Wow. My. That would, yeah, that's a tough one. All right. Yes, sir. Okay. Well, yeah. Yeah. We're gonna we're going to talk about some dudes, and we can make that dude fit, and we'll talk about how in a minute. That's all your hand. Yes. 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 Yeah, it's time for you to get over it or be careful about that. Did I see a hand over here somewhere? All right. Oh, Sister Carter. Wow. Yeah. 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 Right, you can't, exactly. You feel responsible for something. That's good. No, that's a good one. That's a good one. Right, I got you. All right, did I see another hand over here? Okay. People grieve different ways. They really do. People show emotion many different ways, and you can't make someone accountable to their emotions the way you want them to be. All right, good. Anyone else? It does not stop it.
That's the thing. The service of grieving has its own steps. And that first week, you're really not even yourself. You just going through the motion.
Yeah.
And so, each person is different, but especially if you take care of that person, of course you're closer than somebody that's just coming from out of town.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a true process, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a second.
Sometimes it might be a year.
Oh, it's
not
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm going to read these, I think it was 3 total, that some will be similar to the things we said, and then just put a different spin on it. And then we're going to talk about some ways to really help somebody. The first one, it says, don't tell a bereaved parent that at least she has other children, or she can have more. Or this is another one that I have actually heard, or at least she had her child for that many years. Yeah. What's that, Sister Karen? Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, and I thought those were so profound, because at that moment, you just lost your child. And you don't want to weigh up what you have in them with other kids and all that. That's not the time for that. And the fact that you may have had a certain amount of time with that child, but you don't know how they see the time that they feel like they've lost as well. So that's not a fair assessment to present to them at that moment in the middle of that grief. Does that make sense? Wow. She still be grieving. Mm-hmm. And it was never, I'm sure it was never the same. Yeah. And I can't imagine as a parent that you truly can't ever get over the loss of a child. And you can't, and nobody can make you get over it. And like she said, in that instance, Aunt Marie had 6 other kids, but it did not replace the one she lost in that one. And when my grandparents lost Clarence, it's the same thing. They have 6 other kids as well, but that one, it's each child is special in their own right. So you cannot put that on them to make them get over it or deal with it. No, we're going to talk about how to help them, but that, they are passing 85, and she passed in like 2004 or something, right? So it was almost 20 years that she still, as Shug said, she never truly got over it per se. So you can't make somebody get over it no matter what. And he wasn't a teenager or whatever. He may have been in his 30s or something. Mm-hmm. So, it's not about the length of time you had. You can never get back the time you actually feel like you've lost. Does that make sense? All right, so that was one. The other one is, don't tell them stories of families that have had it even worse. And it says it's not a competition of who lost the most. It's not. I thought that was so profound the way they wrote that. You know, that's not the time. I think you said this is their time to grieve. You don't want to compare their situation to somebody else. And then, you know, I've heard even some people say, well, it ain't nothing like when we lost so-and-so. I mean, really? We got to be cautious about what we're saying to people. Any questions or comments on that one? All right, and then this other one is, don't tell the person that you know exactly what they're going through. Somebody said that. Even if you lost someone in a violent way, it isn't ever exactly the same because people have different relationships and we are all different. So even if you have lost someone in a tragic way, that's not your time to revisit your tragedy to them. If you want to help, now we can talk about some ways to help. One of the first ones, I'll give you this one, is to be present for them in their right now situation without bringing your own baggage to the equation. All right, somebody else. Now we can talk about some ways we can help somebody. How can we actually help? You had one earlier. Absolutely. Listen, and listen some more. And be positive in your responses. Yes, ma'am. Exactly. Yeah, you don't want to. That's not fair to them to have you be asking questions to satisfy your curiosities and your. That's it. If you genuinely care, just be present. And if they want to share, they will. And when they share, it's not really for your benefit. It's for them to release and to process things themselves. So you need to still support that moment and not take from them then at that moment and then internalize it for your own benefit. All right. Anybody else? Let me answer this because the CS trade and make sure they're good. Is that good? If I get one more call, I will, but let me at least get through this conversation and we'll see. This is the difference between Trey and Marissa. I'm not picking on him, but he called me, he said, she doesn't want to go in because she don't think it's at home. So he's sitting there trying, because he don't want to disrespect his mom. Where Marissa would be like, no, we go. So I had to give him permission to go ahead and tell her, no, go ahead. I know, I love him. He's so polite. He's a respectful kid, but that's exactly what that was. Marissa, like I said, she would mark. Exactly. All right, so we're talking about ways to help. Somebody give me another one. How can we help? Well, let's finish this first, and then we'll talk about it and see. I'm trying to help y'all help other folk. Okay, but seriously, real talk though. One thing, speaking from a spiritual place, this is one thing I try to do. Even though we know as believers that nothing that happens to a believer is outside of the will of God. But that God didn't call us to be smart in those moments. He just calls us to be compassionate. So one thing I try to do is first of all, I offer no advice if I'm not asked. You don't go in there talking about the Lord won't put more on you than you can bear, or this is God's will, or you don't go in there you don't lead with those things. You just lead with love and support. But if someone happens to ask you, why would this happen? they're not really ready to receive the message just then and there. So one thing I've learned to do is to try to help them understand, well, from my experience, God tends to reveal his will as you go along the process. I don't know. I'll even tell them. I don't even know why this would happen. But we'll understand it basically as we proceed, and God makes it plain to us. But how can I help you deal with it? You see what I'm saying? You got to try to help them deal with the process and help them realize that it's not going to happen overnight. And I, because of my experience in dealing with certain stages of it through different avenues, I give them permission to be in their feelings right then and there. I'll help them understand it's okay if you're mad. It's okay if you're upset. This is a natural part of it. But you can help them understand that even though you're right here, there's different stages and it changes through each stage. And when it's time for that stage, God will be there with you then, just as he is right now. So you try to help them see it from a place of, I may not understand it mentally right now, but through the eyes of my spirit, I haven't been disconnected from God, and he'll walk me through it and make it clear as I go. Does that make sense? You have to be cautious on it, and you have to ask God for wisdom on what to say and how to say it. But that's the main goal at that time, is to help them begin to transition the way they see it, because everything about right now is from an emotional standpoint, whether it be a high, a low, or a series of it. So emotions, we've been learning through this is why I'm talking about it, that emotions confuse faith. So you got to help them understand that that's what's happening and that that's okay. But it does not mean you don't have faith. It does not mean that faith is not going to sustain you. We just got to deal with a series of emotions and feelings so that we can get back to that place of faith. Does that make sense? Questions or comments? Yes. All right. Yeah. 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 Is that true, brother? Yeah. Yeah. And because they probably knew her emotional state, what it was going to be, and probably wanted to do it in person, I'm assuming. Yeah. Yeah. Worked up, yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. and to be honest with you, in that instance, both of them are right. They're both right. He's coming from the perspective of he's feeling like their emotions is going to dictate a little bit of hers. So be cautious about proceeding with your emotions. But Sugar's right in the fact that he couldn't really tell them how to contain their emotions because they're grieving just like she is. So that's a dynamic that's a little bit different versus somebody who may not necessarily be attached to it versus somebody who's in the middle of it. But in that instance, they both kind of right, and you just got to find out how to handle it, what's best for that situation. You got to sometime.
Yeah, something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be that I so much
Yeah.
lady did somewhere, she, so this don't sound say she did this.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, and it's not because I think I'm so strong, but some people just don't just.
Yeah. Yeah, some people are very emotional and that's their barometer for everything. So you got to learn how to work within their personality and their emotions, but you got to know the difference between the two. It's okay to have the feelings, but when it comes time for action and responses, you got to guide them from feelings back to faith. That's the key. Yes, sir. Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think when you have a child and you really trying to live right, God will put something in front of you. And children tell you every
Yeah, yeah,
A month before he died,
yeah,
I had a $200 account.
yeah.
So
So,
I didn't want to make money.
yeah,
And she did. We were going through some insurance stuff and just, and Ray got all this insurance. And you know, God, just, you know, it was always somebody else.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
a month before he died,
Wow.
I got
Yeah, yeah,
and then, you know, but again, she was going through this. I don't know how that was. It's still my sister.
right, exactly, exactly. You brought to mind something else I was gonna say.
And I didn't want to hear it.
Exactly. Yeah. But while he's there and I'm here, I saw your hand, but let me get, can you remember your point? I don't want to forget mine. I'm getting up in that age, bro. But no, that's the other thing. That is not the time for judgment statements, nor don't, I mean, because I have heard people say, well, if they hadn't been doing such and such, and suddenly that's not the time for that. Or that's not even the time for us to try to invite people back to church. Don't tell, you know, even, I've seen some people after the funeral, well, you gonna come to church Sunday, or that's not the time for that, y'all. Just let your light shine. Be there, help them, love them, and God will work through you to make it possible for them to understand what their needs may be ongoing. But you don't have to be God's messenger to tell somebody what they should do or why this has happened to them, because then you're basically standing in a place of judgment, and that will actually turn them away from actually the love of God that might help them in that moment. Does that make sense? Yes, sir. Yeah. 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 No, you gave them probably the solution part. You got to help them process the problem first. And the only way you can try to help people understand the dynamic of the why, the bad in this world, is to help them understand the depravity of the fallen world that we live in. You know, the world we live in as we know it is just cursed, point blank and simple. It's cursed. But that's why God has set in motion for us to be freed from it, so that it does not become our eternal existence. So there's never going to be a complete understanding of the ways of this world, because it is so corrupt. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. And there's nothing that's ever going to save the world as we know it. But then you have to help them understand that a good God has provided a way out of this bad world. And that to understand the ways of this good God is going to require us to think on a faith level and not a what we see level. Does that make sense? It's a hard lesson to help somebody understand sometimes, but that's the only real answer you can give them, is to point to the corruption of the world as we live in and know it, and that it's been cursed since their first sin. And so all these tragic and unexplainable things that happen is a result of this fallen state that we are living in. But then you can point them to the way out of this world in the love of God in spite of it, and how he can help in spite of the bad things that actually happen. Does that make sense? All right. That's an honest situation, because that's one of the more popular questions you will get asked from somebody, is why do bad things happen to good people? Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions, comments? All right. So I guess y'all want me to get out of here, huh? What's that? Bye. Well, we were going to finish this up anyway, so we pretty much had a good summary of it. Next week we will do our movie night breakthrough. I did need to ask, did y'all want to try to have food again next week? Do y'all just want to do the movie this time, or what? You know, I'm leaving it kind of up to the class to decide how we want to do it. They got preference? Well, the only reason I'm asking, I know that a few of you all took it on last time and did a marvelous job with it, but I didn't want you to feel like you had to do it. You don't have to. I just didn't want to I just want to leave it, put it out there. If we want to, we get amongst ourselves again and do it. If not, just show up here and ready to have a good time. I figured it would. But y'all want to, we got a group of people that want to work together to try to get that done. Then. Well, y'all did an amazing job last time, that's for sure. So if y'all are willing and y'all want to, I think it would be well supported. So we will do kind of like we did last time. Did we start eating at 6? I think we did, didn't we? I think we started the food around 6 and then gave a little bit of cushion time and then actually started the movie at 6:30. I'm starting the movie at 6:30 for sure. So we'll just make plans to try to start at 6 and I'll make that announcement to them. I'll call them or text them and let them know what's going on and then we'll announce it Sunday as well, okay? All right, anything else on that? Yeah. Yeah, wear your favorite team, whatever colors you want to wear. Now, don't wear no Bloods and Crips now. wear some real team colors now. And we're going to have a good time with that. That's next Saturday, but yeah. Yeah, it's not this Saturday, that's next Saturday. Yeah, that's next Saturday. I don't want to confuse nobody. We'll wait till next week and announce it. Yeah, yeah, nothing this weekend. All right. All right, well, thank y'all and appreciate your love, support. Reverend Washington, will you give us a closing prayer? You might give us a closing prayer. Thank y'all again.